Back in 1994, FIFA took what might be one of the biggest gambles in the history of sports. They decided to award the world's most popular tournament to a nation that honestly barely seemed to care about it. This is the incredible story of the USA '94 World Cup and how a really risky bet completely changed the game for soccer in America.
And that was really the question on everyone's mind, right? In the early 90s, the very idea of the United States, the land of baseball, basketball, and American football, hosting the World Cup, it just felt almost absurd to the rest of the world. So how on earth did it happen, and what was the result?
So to really get our heads around this thing, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at why the US was such an improbable host to begin with. Then, the global skepticism it was up against. We'll dive into the incredible challenges they had to overcome, the messy but magnificent tournament itself, and finally, the lasting legacy it created. Okay, so to understand why everyone was so skeptical, you have to look at the situation on the ground. From a footballing perspective, the United States was, well, it was basically a blank slate. We're talking about a country with a huge, gaping hole where a top-tier professional soccer league should have been. Just look at this timeline for a second. For a full decade, from 1984 all the way to 1994, the United States had no major professional men's soccer league. The NASL had collapsed. Just think about that. The country about to host the world's biggest single sport event didn't even have its own professional league. It's kind of mind-boggling. And this professional void, it wasn't just a domestic problem. Oh no, it fueled some serious doubt all across the globe, painting the US as a nation of total newcomers on the world stage. This quote just hits the nail on the head. To the established powers of the sport, your Brazils, your Argentinas, the US just didn't have the culture, the passion, or the history. It wasn't a footballing nation. So the decision to give them the tournament was met with a lot of confusion, and in some places, just straight up contempt. And this skepticism wasn't just about, culture or passion. It was deeply practical. FIFA itself was worried about the absolute basics, like the fields. I mean, could you really hold a World Cup on temporary grass that was just rolled out over the artificial turf of an American football stadium? It was a huge and very legitimate concern. So on top of the cultural doubts and the practical worries about the fields, there was the sheer scale of the operation. Trying to host the World Cup in a country the size of a continent, well, it presented a logistical challenge unlike anything the tournament had ever seen before. I mean, look at this list of cities. They were spread all over the country, from Massachusetts to California, Florida to Michigan. Teams and fans were dealing with multiple time zones and just vast distances. In Pontiac, Michigan, they even made history with the first World Cup games ever played indoors. It was a massive, incredibly complex undertaking. And then there was the heat. 120 degrees. That was the on-field temperature in Fahrenheit during the US versus Romania match in Pasadena. To make sure the games were on at a good time for European TV audiences, a lot of matches were scheduled for the middle of the afternoon, forcing players and fans to deal with absolutely brutal, scorching conditions. So, with all this doubt, all these immense challenges, how did the tournament actually go? Well, it was this fascinating mix of, let's call them slightly embarrassing glitches, and on the other hand, absolutely undeniable, record-shattering success. The whole thing kicked off in a way that probably had the skeptics nodding and saying, "See, I told you so." During the opening ceremony, Oprah Winfrey literally fell off the platform. Then, for the big moment, music legend Diana Ross was supposed to score this staged penalty kick that would make a prop goal split in half. She shanked it wide, and the goal just split apart anyway. It was pure cringe. But despite that clumsy, almost comical start, the American public responded in a way that nobody expected. This number here, 3,587,538, that's the total attendance for the tournament. It didn't just break the old record, it absolutely shattered it by over 1 million people. And what's crazy is that record still stands today, even though later tournaments have had more teams and more games. And this chart really drives the point home. The average attendance for every single match was nearly 69,000 people. So despite having no pro league and all that international skepticism, Americans showed up in massive, unprecedented numbers, filling these giant stadiums and creating an absolutely electric atmosphere. So what did all of this mean in the long run? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The incredible, surprising success of USA 94 became the foundation for the sport's entire future in the country. This was the moment that FIFA's huge gamble officially and spectacularly paid off. You can literally draw a straight line from this one tournament to the professional game we have today in America. The World Cup wasn't just some month-long party. Its record-breaking success and the genuine excitement it created were the direct catalyst for creating Major League Soccer just 2 years later. It gave the sport the exact push it so desperately needed. And that legacy couldn't be clearer. MLS kicked off in 1996 with just 10 teams. It was this fragile little seedling. Today, it's grown into a stable, expanding league of 30 clubs, and it's the longest-lasting professional soccer league in American history. And it all goes back to that wild summer of 1994. So, as the United States gets ready to co-host the tournament again in 2026, it's coming from a totally different place. It's not a skeptical newcomer anymore. It's an established soccer nation. Which leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. If 1994 built the foundation, what new chapter in American soccer history is about to be written?